February 4th, 2019. It was Chinese New Year's Eve, one of the most important and sacred holidays for Chinese communities around the world. But amid the warm, festive atmosphere of this reunion celebration, something horrific was unfolding in Manhattan, New York City. A 65-year-old Chinese-American woman who lived alone in her apartment had suddenly vanished, along with her car, leaving behind no trace or word for her family. This mysterious disappearance left her son deeply worried. He spent days searching everywhere for his mother but found nothing. Finally, desperate and out of options, he went to the police station to file a missing person report. No one could have imagined that just one day after receiving that report, police would make a gruesome discovery. They found the elderly woman's decomposing body inside a trash bin outside a luxury home in New Jersey, far from where she lived. Her tragic and mysterious death launched a difficult, complex investigation. And as that investigation deepened, layer by layer of truth was peeled back, leading police to a discovery that shocked everyone. The killer behind this brutal murder was none other than the person the victim loved and trusted most. The victim was Paula, 65 years old, a longtime resident of New York City. Born in 1954, she was a Chinese American, born and raised in the United States. In 1980, when Paula was 26, she married a man of Chinese descent named Philip. By 1987, after years of saving and hard work, Paula and Philip decided to spend their entire savings on a 2-story building with 3 separate units in Manhattan's Tribeca neighborhood. That same year, the couple founded a company specializing in school supplies. They used one of the 3 units as their office, saving on costs while making it convenient to manage their business. Thanks to their tireless efforts and sharp business instincts, the company gradually found its footing and grew steadily. Orders increased, customers multiplied, and profits rose significantly. With the money they earned, Paula and Philip didn't stop there. They continued investing wisely, purchasing additional real estate properties to rent out and generate returns, steadily building substantial wealth. Their remarkable business success allowed them to live comfortably, without financial worries. Once everything was stable, they decided the time was right to have children. In 1993, Paula gave birth to their first son, Brandon. He was the joy and pride of the family. 4 years later, in 1997, Paula had another son, Jared. In 2008, Philip passed away from lung cancer. From then on, Paula managed the entire company alone, becoming a successful businesswoman. Beyond her busy work life, she also took on the role of both parents. She devoted herself to raising Brandon and Jared, caring for their every meal and every need, paying close attention to their education and development. She tried to give them the love of both a father and mother, so they wouldn't feel they lacked anything compared to their peers. Fortunately, both sons were well-behaved and understanding. Both studied hard and eventually earned admission to prestigious universities with excellent grades, making Paula incredibly proud. Watching her 2 sons grow into young men ready to start their own careers, Paula felt deeply satisfied and at peace. She felt she had fulfilled her responsibility as a mother, raising them well. Moreover, she was entering her twilight years, time to rest and enjoy what remained of her life. So Paula began thinking about retirement, planning to gradually hand over the company to Brandon and Jared to continue the family business their parents had built. February 4th, 2019 was a Monday, and also the sacred Chinese New Year's Eve. Around the world, Chinese families were gathering together, sharing warm reunion dinners and exchanging wishes for the new year. But while everyone else was celebrating, Brandon, Paula's eldest son, was consumed by worry and unease. He rushed to the NYPD's 1st precinct to report his mother missing. With an anxious expression and a trembling voice, Brandon told police that his mother and her car had mysteriously disappeared for several days with no word at all. The last time he saw her at home was the previous Thursday, nearly a week earlier. Throughout those days, Brandon had called her countless times at different hours, but every call went straight to voicemail. Deeply worried, he personally went to her apartment to check, but it was empty, and he still couldn't find any trace of her. Brandon had also asked his younger brother Jared if he knew where their mother was, but Jared just shook his head, saying he didn't know either, and was also trying to find her. Since the company employees were on leave for Chinese New Year, they couldn't provide any information about where Paula had gone. By the time Brandon filed his report, his mother had been missing for exactly 4 days, with no one knowing where she was or what had happened. Brandon said he had a very bad feeling, an intense sense of unease that had been haunting him for days. He believed something terrible might have happened to his mother because she was someone who always planned everything and always informed family members, especially during an important holiday like Chinese New Year, a day Chinese families valued above all others. Her sudden loss of contact at this particular time was completely abnormal and terrified Brandon. Immediately after receiving Brandon's report, NYPD launched their initial investigation into Paula's mysterious disappearance. The first thing police did was check Paula's cell phone data and bank records. The results revealed something highly suspicious. Starting from January 31st, a few days before Chinese New Year, all of Paula's activity had suddenly stopped. No outgoing or incoming calls, no text messages, no withdrawals or card transactions of any kind. For someone who lived independently with regular daily routines like Paula, this was extremely abnormal. Next, police contacted and interviewed relatives, friends, neighbors, and people who regularly interacted with Paula. Unfortunately, no one had seen her in the final days before her disappearance, and no one recalled anything unusual. Paula seemed to have simply evaporated from her daily life, leaving no clear clues behind. Undeterred, police decided to go directly to Paula's Manhattan apartment with her 2 sons, Brandon and Jared, to examine the scene. The apartment remained unchanged. Belongings were neat, there were no signs of forced entry or struggle, no bloodstains, no damaged items. Everything looked as if Paula had just stepped out briefly and would return, not like a serious disappearance case. However, just when the search seemed to hit a dead end, an unexpected detail emerged. While checking the trunk of Jared's car, police discovered some clothing identified as items Paula had worn before she vanished. More notably, these clothes had dark stains that looked very much like dried blood. This discovery immediately raised the tension. When asked about the clothing in his trunk, Jared couldn't provide a convincing explanation, answering vaguely and avoiding details. His silence and nervousness raised serious questions among the investigators. Still, police understood that current evidence wasn't enough to draw conclusions or make an arrest. Rather than confronting him aggressively or applying direct pressure, they decided to remain calm, avoid alerting the suspect, and secretly place Jared on their list of persons of interest. A covert investigation plan was developed to monitor his movements and gather more concrete evidence before the truth could be fully revealed. As they expanded their investigation, police reviewed all properties registered under Paula's name, hoping to find any location that might be connected to her mysterious disappearance. Through property records, they discovered that besides the 2-story building in Tribeca, Manhattan, Paula also owned a separate house in New Jersey. This house was located in Morristown, a fairly quiet, isolated area. Unlike bustling Manhattan, it was surrounded by dense forest, with hardly any neighboring homes and considerable distance between properties. This remote location made the house feel almost completely cut off from the outside world, especially at night. According to information police gathered from relatives and Paula's living records, this house wasn't her primary residence. It was a vacation home where Paula occasionally stayed on weekends, holidays, or special occasions when she needed a quiet place to rest. Most of the year, the house sat nearly empty with no regular visitors. This detail immediately caught investigators' attention. In cases of disappearances without a trace, remote locations far from residential areas are often exploited to hide criminal activity or conceal evidence. So police suspected right away that the New Jersey house might hold crucial clues related to Paula's disappearance. Without hesitation, police quickly planned a trip to Morristown to examine the scene. And just as they'd suspected, the trip wasn't in vain. As soon as they began searching the property, they made an important discovery. On February 5, 2019, after completing the necessary legal procedures, police arrived at Paula's Morristown house with an official search warrant. The weather that day was cold and damp, and the area around the house was completely deserted. Not a soul in sight. The vacation home, already rarely used, now exuded an even greater sense of isolation and unease. But before police could even step deeper into the property, something abnormal caught their attention. The moment they got out of their vehicles, they detected a strong, putrid smell in the air. Professional instinct told them the situation was far from simple. Officers quickly identified where the smell was coming from, following the scent toward a large trash bin outside the house. The bin looked ordinary, but the stench emanating from it grew increasingly powerful, making the air thick and suffocating. After securing the area, police carefully opened the bin's lid. Inside wasn't household garbage as expected, but a large suitcase, crammed in unnaturally. When the suitcase was opened, police found a decomposing body wrapped tightly in multiple layers of black garbage bags bound with tape, along with a pair of rubber gloves covered in blood. The stench was so overwhelming that officers had to quickly put on protective masks. Clearly, this wasn't an impulsive act. It was a deliberate concealment, carefully prepared and executed. Because the body had already begun to severely decompose, the face and external identifying features were no longer intact. However, based on body size, build, estimated age, and the fact that the discovery location matched the victim's property, police were nearly certain the body in the suitcase was Paula, who had been missing for days. Immediately after discovering the body in the trash bin, police entered the house to conduct a thorough search. During the search, they quickly recovered a roll of tape inside the house that exactly matched the tape used to bind the garbage bags in the suitcase containing the body. That wasn't all. When examining the garage area, police detected signs of blood on the floor, though nearly invisible to the naked eye. This indicated blood had been present there, but the scene had been cleaned quite thoroughly. However, based on years of homicide investigation experience, detectives quickly reached an important conclusion. The Morristown house was very likely not the original crime scene. The reason was that there weren't enough signs of a direct attack. No significantly disturbed belongings, no clear signs of struggle, and the amount of blood detected wasn't consistent with a killing. Instead, the location resembled a transfer point, a place where the killer temporarily processed or disposed of the body after the murder had occurred elsewhere. Based on this assessment, police decided to return to Paula's Manhattan apartment for a second, more extensive and thorough search. There, they recovered rubber gloves and tape of the same type as evidence found at the Morristown house. Additionally, police discovered a knife along with a large quantity of cleaning supplies and sanitizers, far more than necessary for normal daily use. Although the apartment looked clean and tidy to the naked eye with no visible bloodstains, police weren't fooled by appearances. They immediately requested the forensic team use luminol reagent to test surfaces throughout the home. And right there, the truth began to emerge. When special lighting was turned on, the kitchen floor showed a strong fluorescent reaction, indicating a large amount of blood had been present there, despite multiple cleanings. The reaction spread widely, not just a few small drops, but signs of a serious incident, enough to confirm that violence had occurred. From all the evidence collected, police reached a crucial conclusion. Paula's Manhattan apartment was the original crime scene. The killer most likely murdered Paula there, then used cleaning supplies to erase traces, trying to return the apartment to a normal state. Only after everything was cleaned did the killer transport Paula's body to the Morristown house, stuff it into a suitcase, and dispose of it in the trash bin. Shortly afterward, while expanding their search, police finally located Paula's 2004 Toyota Sienna, the car reported missing along with her, parked on a street not far from the Manhattan apartment. The car's location wasn't too remote, as if someone had deliberately left it somewhere easy to overlook, but not close enough to immediately arouse suspicion. When examining the vehicle, police quickly found abnormalities inside. The car contained a set of clothes, a roll of tape, and most significantly, blood soaked deep into the trunk carpet. The amount of blood wasn't small, indicating the trunk had been used to transport something very heavy, most likely the victim's body. All collected samples, blood from the trunk, traces at the Manhattan apartment, and blood evidence at the Morristown house, were sent for analysis. DNA comparison results quickly closed all doubt. The body in the suitcase was indeed Paula, who had been missing for days. Additionally, all blood traces appearing at 3 different locations belonged to the same person, proving this was a chain of connected actions, not separate incidents. The autopsy report that followed revealed the brutality of the case. On Paula's body, forensic examiners found multiple stab wounds distributed across various locations, showing she had endured repeated attacks. Her head also showed signs of blunt force trauma, consistent with the theory that Paula had been severely beaten before being killed. But the most haunting part was the final forensic conclusion. Those wounds, though serious, were not the direct cause of death. The actual cause of Paula's death was a deep cut to the throat that caused such rapid blood loss she couldn't be saved. Based on tissue damage and physiological responses, forensic experts reached a determination that made everyone shudder. Paula didn't die immediately after being attacked. She remained conscious and showed signs of life for a period of time before finally collapsing. That meant in her final moments, Paula had to endure extreme physical agony. Because police had previously found Paula's belongings in Jared's trunk, along with a chain of physical evidence directly linking the car, the apartment, and the New Jersey house, Jared immediately became the prime suspect. From that point on, nearly all investigative efforts focused on the youngest son Paula had loved so dearly. As the investigation deepened, scattered pieces began connecting in frightening ways. Phone data, travel routes, contradictory statements, and forensic evidence gradually lifted the veil over the truth behind this almost unbelievable case. On February 6, 2019, after gathering sufficient evidence, police officially announced the suspects connected to Paula's death. First and foremost was Jared, her 22-year-old youngest son. At the same time, police confirmed that Jared's girlfriend, Caitlin, 21, and another female friend named Jennifer, 18, were both directly involved in the case. All 3 were arrested that same day. According to police, they possessed irrefutable key evidence proving Jared was the one who directly killed Paula. The motive was very likely rooted in a dispute over money related to the victim's assets and financial control. Caitlin and Jennifer, though not directly involved in the killing, were charged with helping Jared after the murder occurred, including processing the body, covering up evidence, and helping transport the victim's remains. After his arrest, Jared was formally charged with murder at Manhattan Criminal Court. Given the severity of the case and the volume of evidence police held, the judge ordered Jared held without bail pending trial, indicating the court assessed his flight risk and danger level as extremely high. Meanwhile, Caitlin and Jennifer, identified as accomplices after the murder, were charged with concealing a body and tampering with evidence. Considering their ages and lesser roles, the judge allowed both to post bail. $50,000 for Caitlin and $100,000 for Jennifer. The day Jared was escorted to court, the area outside Manhattan Criminal Court was packed with reporters and curious onlookers. Cameras, microphones, and rapid-fire questions surrounded him. In that brief moment, a reporter shouted directly, "Are you the one who killed your mother?" The question cut straight to the heart of the case. Jared immediately turned around and denied it vehemently, his voice agitated. "I loved my mother very much. She gave me everything." He was then quickly ushered inside the courthouse, leaving behind countless skeptical and outraged stares. After being detained, Jared continued to adamantly deny any involvement in Paula's death. During interviews with investigators, he repeatedly emphasized that the case absolutely wasn't motivated by money. Jared acknowledged knowing his mother owned multiple valuable properties and had about $11 million in bank accounts, but according to him, those assets had never been an issue and had nothing to do with his personal life. Jared stated that January 31st was the last time he saw Paula. That day, the two had a fairly heated argument. According to Jared, the cause was that Paula suffered from Alzheimer's disease, which made her mentally unstable with frequent mood swings, creating constant tension between them. After that argument, Jared said he left the Manhattan apartment and never returned. He claimed he later went to the New Jersey house with the sole purpose of retrieving his personal coin collection to sell for cash to pay his rent. However, police didn't believe Jared's statement at all. because alongside his adamant denials, they had collected a chain of circumstantial but extremely tight evidence, each piece pointing directly at Jared as the true mastermind behind Paula's death. When examining Jared's cell phone, police discovered search data that sent chills down any investigator's spine. On the morning of January 31st, just hours before Paula was believed to have disappeared, Jared had searched Google for terms related to carotid artery and life insurance. These weren't random keywords, but content directly related to methods of causing rapid death and financial benefits after death, showing signs of premeditation. The chain of text messages that followed made the picture even clearer. Around 7 p.m. that same day, Jared texted Jennifer saying he was going to do it tonight. At 10:46 p.m., Jared sent another message to Jennifer announcing that it was done. The content didn't mention any specific details, but the timing of the messages coincided suspiciously with the window when police determined the murder could have occurred. It didn't stop there. At midnight, Jared sent another text to his girlfriend Caitlin. "I got rid of my problem. I did it. I'm finally free." In police assessment, this wasn't a message from someone who just had an ordinary day. It sounded like the mindset of someone who just finished a heavy burden, perhaps even a criminal act. A few hours later, Caitlin replied to Jared with a message that removed any remaining doubt for investigators. "Already cleaned everything up. The hardest part was getting it into the car." This statement, placed in the context of Paula's body being found in a suitcase and a blood-stained trunk, practically served as an indirect admission of crime scene cleanup and body transportation. Police didn't rely solely on phone data. They also obtained a decisive piece of surveillance video. Footage from cameras showed Jennifer driving to Paula's apartment on the night of the crime. Specifically, at 12:50 a.m., Jennifer appeared in front of the building where Paula lived. At 2:31 a.m., surveillance cameras captured Caitlin loading a large suitcase into the trunk of Paula's Toyota Sienna. Immediately afterward, she drove the car away from Manhattan, heading toward New Jersey. Data from automatic license plate readers confirmed the Toyota Sienna's travel route that day. The car made multiple trips between Manhattan and New Jersey, with timestamps at 2:52 a.m., 4:26 a.m., 1:37 p.m., and 4:48 p.m. These unusual trips aligned perfectly with the body transportation, concealment, and disposal process police had reconstructed. After the murder, instead of panicking or seeking help, Jared began a series of actions that made police shudder. Data from his computer and phone showed he actively researched body disposal methods, searching for extreme terms like DIY bone powder and content related to eliminating traces after killing someone. These searches showed Jared wasn't just trying to hide his crime, he was considering more drastic options. Simultaneously, Jared also attempted to directly access Paula's finances. Police discovered he had tried to change his mother's bank account passwords and contacted attorneys for advice on inheritance and property ownership matters. All these signs led police to an increasingly clear conclusion. Jared's motive very likely stemmed from the massive assets Paula controlled. Not just cash in the bank, but multiple high-value properties in New York and New Jersey. Digging deeper into family background, police discovered that after Philip, Jared's father, passed away, he left both sons, Brandon and Jared, a substantial inheritance. However, according to the will, all assets were placed under Paula's management, and only when both brothers reached age 35 would they be entitled to officially inherit their share. For Brandon, this wasn't a major issue, but for Jared, a young man with unstable finances facing many life pressures, this provision may have become an unacceptable barrier. Police, therefore, didn't rule out the possibility that Jared wanted to inherit early, to gain immediate control of the assets, and from there developed the intention to eliminate the very mother standing between him and that wealth. But what made investigators feel coldest was that after Paula had been killed, Jared continued texting his mother, pretending to be concerned, asking where she was and when she'd be home. On the surface, those messages looked like worry from a filial son, but in reality, they were sent when Jared knew full well that Paula would never be able to reply again. According to accounts from relatives and friends, Paula had always especially doted on her youngest son, Jared. Since Jared was only 11 when his father Philip died, leaving a huge void in the family, Paula took on the roles of both mother and father, devoting nearly all her love and attention to Jared, wanting to compensate for the losses he'd suffered so young. Under her devoted care, Jared grew up healthy and happy, lacking nothing material or emotional. Paula always tried to give Jared the best within her means. She invested seriously in his education, enabling him to attend the State University of New York at New Paltz. During college, Jared was fairly active. He interned at various companies, participating in work like video production, editing, and social media content planning. However, after graduation, Jared didn't choose a stable career path right away. Instead, he decided to become a content creator and amateur photographer. That free, creative lifestyle sounded appealing, but the income was extremely unstable, nowhere near enough to cover living expenses in expensive New York. So Paula quietly provided Jared with ongoing financial support. Jared's girlfriend Caitlin was his junior at college. They met and started dating in 2018, and by the time of the crime had been together about a year and a half. The relationship initially seemed unremarkable, and Paula hadn't shown opposition or tried to interfere. However, even though police had collected a massive amount of physical and digital evidence showing Jared's close connection to Paula's death, they still lacked one crucial piece: testimony from a direct witness who could confirm Jared was the mastermind behind the entire case. That witness could only be Caitlin or Jennifer. But during interviews, Jennifer proved extremely tough, maintaining a closed attitude and firmly refusing to reveal any information about the case. Caitlin, on the other hand, showed visible anxiety. She frequently lost composure, gave contradictory answers, avoided eye contact, and displayed obvious psychological distress. So police believed Caitlin could become the breakthrough in the case. After multiple interrogations, Caitlin finally confessed and identified Jared as the killer, recounting the entire incident from start to finish. The timeline rewound to midnight on January 31st, 2019. Caitlin was getting ready for bed in her college dorm when she suddenly received a barrage of texts and calls from Jared. Unease immediately washed over her because Jared's voice on the other end was trembling, urgent, and panicked. In that phone call, Jared confessed that he had killed his own mother. He didn't stop at confession. He demanded Caitlin come help him deal with the aftermath. The psychological shock was so overwhelming that Caitlin nearly froze, but in her confused and terrified state, she still complied. Immediately after hanging up, Caitlin drove away from her dorm, traveling over 80 miles to Paula's apartment, the crime scene. When she arrived, she met Jennifer, and the two quickly began erasing evidence at the scene under Jared's direction. Caitlin and Jennifer used various strong cleaning agents to wipe down the floor, kitchen surfaces, and blood-stained areas. Paula's blood-stained clothes and items were loaded into the apartment's washing machine, aiming to eliminate any biological traces that could lead police to the truth. The entire process took place in tense silence, under heavy psychological pressure that Caitlin later described as no different from living in a nightmare. After the scene was basically cleaned, Jared put Paula's body into a large suitcase and loaded it into the trunk of the victim's own Toyota Sienna. From there, he began driving back and forth between New Jersey and New York, aiming to dispose of the body and discard all remaining evidence. But even after temporarily concealing the scene, Jared couldn't escape his fear. In the days that followed, he grew increasingly anxious, obsessed with the thought that Paula's body would eventually be discovered by police. In that twisted psychological state, Jared developed a horrifying idea: skin Paula's body and grind her bones into powder, hoping to completely eliminate all traces. Fortunately, that gruesome plan was never executed because police arrested Jared in time, ending his chain of criminal behavior. In her subsequent statement to police, Caitlin broke down crying and admitted everything. She said that despite dating Jared for over a year, he had never shared anything about his relationship with his mother, nor had he ever shown any signs of hatred or serious conflict. For Caitlin, everything that happened was too sudden and horrific. Caitlin said the incident was like an inescapable nightmare, and what tormented her most was having helped Jared cover up his crime. Although Caitlin had come forward as a witness, directly identifying Jared's role as the mastermind, Jared still adamantly refused to admit guilt. For a long time, he maintained a cold, hardened attitude, denying all charges as if he were merely a victim of circumstances. His stubbornness dragged the case out for years, forcing the victim's family and the justice system to wait for closure. Finally, on September 16, 2022, after more than 3 years in custody, Jared unexpectedly pleaded guilty to 1 count of intentional murder at Manhattan Supreme Court. This guilty plea didn't come with an apology or genuine remorse. It came with an argument that blamed the victim herself. Before the judge, Jared declared that the tragedy was entirely Paula's own fault. He described his mother as an extremely controlling person who constantly interfered in his personal life. According to Jared, Paula frequently restricted his freedom, controlled his social relationships, and even wouldn't let him travel to New Paltz, about 80 miles away, to visit his girlfriend Caitlin. Jared said he had lived in a state of prolonged mental torment, feeling trapped in an invisible cage. He claimed he was no longer an independent adult, but someone being controlled, with no right to decide his own life. According to his account, the years living with Paula weren't maternal care, but constant psychological pressure. Jared also said he had repeatedly tried to get away from his mother, to move out, citing every possible reason to separate from Paula, but failed every time. Paula, he said, always found ways to keep him close, both financially and emotionally. It was this prolonged deadlock that he claimed increasingly warped his thinking. More disturbingly, Jared admitted that before the crime, he had seriously considered multiple methods to eliminate Paula. He said he had contemplated poisoning her coffee, cutting her car's brakes, even hiring someone to kill her. But ultimately, he hadn't chosen those methods. Until January 31st, 2019, when the conflict between Jared and Paula finally exploded inside the Manhattan apartment. Another argument broke out, but this time was different from before. For Jared, it was the last straw. In a state of mental pressure and material ambition, he made an extreme decision, killing the woman he blamed for all his suffering while seizing control of assets worth $11 million. After committing the murder, Jared immediately contacted Jennifer and Caitlin, demanding both come to help. The 3 worked together to clean the scene and erase blood and evidence. Then Jared drove the body to the Morristown house, a location with few passers-by, to dispose of it. The case dragged on for more than 3 years before reaching its conclusion. On October 18, 2022, Jared, then 25, officially appeared at Manhattan Supreme Court to hear the final verdict. In the courtroom, Jared sat motionless, hands behind his back, face nearly expressionless, silently awaiting his fate. In final arguments, Jared's defense attorney requested the judge reduce his sentence, citing the defendant's psychologically traumatic childhood. The attorney noted that Jared lost his father at age 11, suffering severe psychological shock. According to medical records, his pediatrician had twice diagnosed Jared with depression and anxiety disorder at that time, even referring him to a psychiatrist. However, Jared never received adequate treatment, allowing his psychological condition to persist and worsen, which, according to the defense, planted the seeds for the later tragedy. Before sentencing, Jared was given the opportunity to speak. Standing before the court, he expressed remorse, acknowledging he felt deeply guilty for what he had done. Jared said his mother deserved to live happily and that she deserved a better son. Finally, after considering all evidence, testimony, and arguments from both sides, the judge pronounced Jared guilty of second-degree murder. The sentence was 22 years to life, meaning Jared must serve a minimum of 22 years before being considered for parole. Additionally, the court stripped Jared of all inheritance rights, completely ending any possibility of him profiting from Paula's death. A few weeks later, on November 11, 2022, Caitlin and Jennifer officially pleaded guilty to charges of concealing a body and tampering with evidence. Given their lesser roles and cooperation with investigators, the judge sentenced both to conditional release, closing out the legal accountability of the accomplices. The case ended, But what remained was a shattered family, a mother who lost her life at the hands of the very son she loved. This wasn't just a criminal verdict, it was a chilling reminder about greed, toxic dependency, and psychological wounds left untreated. Things that, if neglected too long, can lead to irreversible tragedy. And that's today's case. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.